What if we could learn from outstanding leaders in business, sports, and education from some of the best voices in corporate America? Lighting the Path is a series of interviews with industry leaders whose stories highlight strategies that build purpose-driven cultures, engage and retain top talent, develop drivers that create high-performance teams, and connect people to the vision of your company. Join us to hear from game-changing, talented leaders whose paths make a difference at work and at home.
And I'm a leader, and I need to select people and invite them into my company. As a professional executive coach, how do you coach me in the selection process to be able to ferret out the belief system? Because I don't think I'm going to go and create a belief system in somebody. I've got to find somebody who's got a wiring that's somewhat similar to the belief system that makes up my company's culture. Am I correct with that?
Yes, I mean, I think so. And what's interesting is I would say that I would take that conversation, say, 2 steps back. So before we get into the room where we're actually trying to bring more people on or interviewing or asking the questions, what I have found, and this is the first line I have in the book, is when's the last time you thought about as a brand what you believe? And I think what has happened in most organizations is over time, they start focusing on the how and the what, the metrics, the initiatives, the stuff. And think about startups. When they start, they have a very clear vision of who they are and what they believe and what the differentiators are and what the hole in the industry they're trying to solve for, what the new product they're bringing to bear. So everything goes through this very clear kind of North Star about why we exist. And everyone that's attached to that brand believes the same thing. So usually startups are not getting paid a lot, right? They're working crazy hours, doing but there's this mission kind of orientation. Over time, that gets watered down. And what I would say is company A that we're talking about, are you clear on why you exist? Are you clear on who you are as a brand? Are you clear on what your differentiators are and how that should show up in the marketplace, both internally in how you build things and externally in how you actually experience them with or meet consumers where they are? And once you have that actual clarity, how do you operationalize that clarity in every single decision you make? So I'll give you one example: values, culture, the words that there's the poster on the wall in the back, which is how most companies live, quote unquote, their culture. What I have done in my past, and I continue to coach my clients on, is you've got to bring it to life, meaning you have to define. So if we say like kindness is a value, what does kindness mean in context of our business?
Mm-hmm.
Define it. And what isn't it? So there's
Yeah.
clarity, because what happens is you just have words or statements, people interpret those. You want to try and get as little interpretation as humanly possible so that everyone's focused on the same things. And then the questions that you ask, the things you look for, flow off of that. It becomes an
Yeah.
easier conversation.
I love that because what happens, the way the human mind works, we convert everything we hear into pictures. That's the
Yeah.
way we
Yes.
do that,
Yes.
right? That's why
Yes.
the power of story. That's why I'm using these stories of Apple, and it helps people understand our
Yes.
concepts better. But what I love about what you're talking about with this is that what I refer to it is that when you look at something like the word kindness, uh, what does that look like? What does that sound like? What does that smell like? What does that taste like? Can you make it tangible for me? And you keep people in a room until there are descriptors where it surfaces itself. And Max Dupree in Leadership as an Art talks about tribal language.
Yes.
And it's so that this word kindness, how does that surface itself?
Yes.
Where people inside said, this is what kindness looks
Yes.
like
And we
in
have
our
a
company.
shared understanding of what that means. It's interesting. First of all, I love that you're talking about this. And so just a very quick example, one of the brands that I led when I got there, essentially we were starting again, kind of like it had started, but we're kind of restarting. And so I brought in, and this is the part we were talking about earlier about you've got to get people engaged and involved and be part of the process. So as we're building what our customer experience we've referred to as the transformational experience. And so I had an offsite with all the general managers and all the field leadership. and I asked them to bring stories, Mike, to your point about stories. I asked them to bring stories of the most transformational experience, most positively transformative, where you felt this changed the way I felt about the entire industry that I was talking, shopping in, or part of, or whatever it might be, something that was really transformational. So everyone had to bring a story, and then everyone told their story. And we told, well, what were the things that made that transformational? And we started just writing down all of the things that make things transformational. So to your point, it was incredibly personal for them, so they could attach
Hmm.
themselves, they understood it, but it also helped us to craft language about the things that make experiences transformational. And of those attributes or examples, which ones felt most like our brand? So to your point, storytelling is super powerful, and it's really important to get people involved in the process so they are architects of the future, not just recipients of proclamations.
Yeah, and the power behind what you're talking about, Matt, is that from a belief standpoint, it really helps as you're bringing new people in,
Yes,
is that they're hearing the stories of what the predecessors, the
yes,
experiences of the organization, this is who we are. And they're usually stories they can take pride in, so they can then tell it to clients, to
yes.
coworkers, pass it down. So it really becomes part of the fabric of the company. As a retail guy, then you've probably heard this story. It's stuck in my head, and it's Nordstrom.
I knew you
Yeah.
were gonna, I knew. See, I've heard
See,
it. I knew
that's
you were gonna talk about this.
the
Please go ahead.
Nordstrom. It's the weirdest story I ever heard. Whether it's true or turned into a fable, I don't know. But some guy walked to a Nordstrom store with a tire in his arm and walked up to a counter and said, I was, well, there's something, I bought a tire here. And now there's a jewelry counter or something like that. And the guy at Nordstrom, the salesperson said, well, give me the tire.
Yeah,
you know, you
like,
know,
and
and,
to your
and
point, whether that actually
I don't
happened or
know.
not, it's famous, it's legendary, but it also illustrates a point, right? Of
Hmm.
what's right for the customer, which was the
Well,
whole,
here's one that did happen because it was a friend of mine worked at Nordstrom, okay, in the men's clothing area. So I bought all my clothes for him. And when I was talking to him one day, he just got through help. He told me a story about a lady who came in who had shoplifted 4 ties. And the reason why I say that, because she was returning the ties. And they were trying to decide what to do with it. And she said, "No, I bought these. I don't have my receipt, but here's the ties." And rather than calling a scene, they gave her the money back and they got out of the store.
Mhm.
All right. And I remember Daryl talking about that. I said, "Why would you do that?" I said, "We have 100% customer experience." And I don't know. I just and and I'm sure because of the Nordstrom culture, the
Yeah,
decisions they make has to do with those two. Now, whether that was the right business decision, I don't know. But Nordstrom's they survived some pretty big downturns and doing okay
absolutely.
themselves.
No, I think and stories are so important. The one thing I would add to that, not that story, but if I may, because I think this is super important as well, is the behaviors you want to see from people have to be aligned with the incentives that you pay them.
Yes.
So, for example, I will give you when e-commerce was just starting and or started enough that it was becoming a larger part of the business. This is what years ago. It wasn't normal to take returns in stores. So you're going back to the return, not they didn't steal it, but returns. They
Hmm.
weren't, it wasn't normal to take returns in store. We wanted to make sure our customer felt they could return whatever they bought, however they bought it to a store if that's what they wanted. The problem was we didn't have the systems to actually take that return out of the daily sales of the store. So the store, payroll, incentives, bonuses, everything was actually calculated off of their sales. So the stores didn't want to take stuff back that came from e-commerce because it was going to hurt them.
Sure.
What we did was we worked with our finance teams and we created what I call the shadow P&L. So even though systemically we couldn't actually change it, we actually did it manually so that they were paid off of the shadow P&L. So the
Mm.
idea was we removed barriers to behaviors that we wanted to see by aligning the idea of like, you're not going to get hurt by this. You can embrace this because it's the right thing to do for the consumer, but we're not going to ding you because of it. So it's the same idea that
Hmm.
if Nordstrom wants it to be about 100% customer service, don't get territorial on the small percentage of people that are returning things that they actually didn't buy.
Yeah, they're breaking the system. They're working. They're the outlier.
Correct. Yeah.
It's a
Yeah.
small piece of it. Then so, um, as always, I warned you ahead of time that this was going to go really fast. But I have something, and you need to tell me, can we talk about this real quickly? If not,
Sure.
we'll do another time. But you have this process that I love, because when you look at the book Built on Belief, it's not a conceptual book. There's a lot of practical,
Yeah.
strategy and tactical things that can be done,
Yeah.
as opposed to living in concept. And it's this thing called the CADET framework. I was intrigued by this because it talks about connect, assess, deliver, exceed. And you've used this word before, which is transform, which is actually my word of the year this year. Okay.
Oh, well done. I feel so relevant.
Every year I pick a word. That was my word. The last year was be bold. Uh, but can you explain what this
Sure.
framework is? And
Sure. As I go into this very quickly, I hate that it spells the word cadet, because cadet, anything in retail as a word is usually a program, and programs are about compliance. So
mm,
unfortunately, I didn't build it that way. It just so happened that they formed a word, and I was
that's
like,
the acronym. Wow.
what are you going to do? What are you going to do? But it's not, it wasn't intentional by any stretch of the imagination. But essentially what it is I tried to distill the journey of a human relationship into an understandable kind of way of thinking about it that's scalable. And so the idea is, if you and I are just meeting, the first step is to connect with each other. Or for me, if I'm the person that works in the business, to connect with you. And that doesn't mean like sitting there at a front storefront saying, hello, that's a greeter. Connection is being curious, asking questions, looking for information, trying to understand your needs, wants, desires through this process of curiosity, right? Once I actually have all of that, or as much as I can, I move to assess. And assess is taking all the information that you've given me and trying to figure out, based on stated and unstated needs, what I have to offer you. It might be things that exist today. It might be things I have to create to actually be able to satisfy or exceed your expectations. But it's the formation of a strategy of how I want to actually give you what you need. Deliver is about stated needs. So if you come in and ask for, a pair of denim 3230, I need to get them for you as frictionlessly and efficiently as possible, so that that is a stated need, flawless execution. Once I do that, I can move to what I refer to as exceed, which is the unstated need. So maybe you were in the store, you aren't from this area, you are visiting and I hear you oversay to a friend or someone, hey, I'd love to go to dinner. I just don't know where to go. And I say to you, hey, Mike, I heard you say that you want to go to dinner. Here's 5 restaurants which I think are great. I know people who work at 2 of them. If you want me to call them, I can probably get your reservation.
Wow. Yeah.
That's like, whoa, wait a second. You didn't ask me to do that, but I was listening, and I
Mm-hmm.
was looking for ways to make your experience that much better. And by the way, that didn't cost me anything either, right?
Sure.
Intentional, deliberate thoughtfulness. Transform is when you execute flawlessly. So deliver is great and exceed is great. What happens is you keep figuring out ways to invest in that relationship so that people change how they think about you, the brand, and potentially the industry as a result. And because it's a cycle, it's dynamic because people are dynamic. Every time I see you, there's going to be hopefully more curiosity, learning more, understanding how you've evolved, the changes, whatever it might actually be. But that's the very like 2-minute version of how I have people start to think about how you move through a relationship.
Yeah, I love this because of the fact that where it fits so well within this concept of belief,
Yes,
understanding believes. That's, to me, that's you're trying to understand the needs of the individual by understanding what their belief system is, whatever's going on
yes,
affecting that.
yes,
And then also understanding the belief of your people as they're guiding them through that process.
yes.
All right. And
And their commitment to wanting to do this,
that's it.
wanting to go deeper, to wanting to be curious, to wanting to figure out ways, and that's a really important thing. The other part of this particular model is that you have to go through it step by step. You can't leapfrog from connect to exceed. And so the perfect example of this is when you've been delayed on a flight and it goes on forever and you're pissed off because they didn't deliver on the time that you're supposed to fly. And then those poor flight attendants that are with you when you finally get on the plane that give you free drink coupons and free
Hmm.
bar, they're trying to exceed your expectations, but it's too late because you're
Right.
so angry about the fact that you're not going to be home on time for dinner that they're just throwing good money after bad. So you can't exceed if you haven't delivered. And
Yeah,
so
especially
the
because of the
idea
fact
of
what
it is you have
happens
to go
is,
through it.
Yeah, because what takes place is their bar has been raised. Okay, from a need standpoint, a desire, whatever, because of the fact their expectations have grown, and
Yeah,
so you
or
can't
they've been
exceed them.
dashed if you didn't deliver on what they actually wanted.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
don't try and exceed when you haven't delivered, right?
I love that. I love that then. So, um, Matt, thank you so much for your time. I mean, I'm assuming that if somebody wants a copy of this book, they pick it up off of Amazon.
Yeah, it's on
It was,
Amazon, Built on Belief, Why Cultures of Commitment Are the Competitive Advantage. And they can follow me on LinkedIn, Matt Marcotte, Marcott. I think you probably have it in the show notes.
mhm.
But yeah, and I would love to talk to anybody that's interested in learning more about this.
Super. Well, great. Well, it's a powerful message with practical application. What we didn't talk about, and we won't, but I'll cap it with this, is everything we talked about has as much and maybe even more importance of an impact at home
Yes,
as it does at work.
yes.
And that's why I think there's power in this message, because this is not about how do I do my job better. It's how do I live my life better.
It's
And
about authenticity. Yes.
that's the gift that you're giving to people whenever they get their hands on this. So
I
good
appreciate
luck
that.
to you on
Great way
this.
to end it. Mike, thank you so much for having me on. I really appreciate it.
Same here. It's been a great. I've really enjoyed it.
Yeah, me too. Thank you so much.
Thanks for joining us today on Lighting the Path: Strategies for Tomorrow's Leaders. If anything in this podcast speaks to you, if I've challenged you, or if you want to spend time digging into this subject a little deeper, or if you disagree with me, reach out. My contact information is on our website, lightingthepath.net, or email me at mike@mikelejeune.com. Also, look for me on LinkedIn. I'd love to connect our networks. Keep lighting the path for those who choose to follow you. It's more than a responsibility, it's an honor.